If you want to call the detective.
Sure, Detective Shunk, returning to the stand.
I'll remind you that you're still under the oath you swore this morning, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. I know you were on this morning, and then we had Mr. Job, and I'm going to ask you some questions about the same exhibit, which is number 498. Just quickly, if you could refresh the jury, what are we looking at in 498?
This is a Bart Halderson Celebrate report.
Okay. And I think we had talked about looking at some data starting at page 2,538, which you last testified. What were you testifying about? What happened at 2:04 p.m. on the 29th of June, 2021?
At 2:04 p.m. on the 29th of June, phone number 608-246-6210 was called for 19 minutes and 46 seconds. That was the call Bart made to Omar Job.
Okay. And there are a couple pages more of entries. Could you walk through, that is entry 110. If you could just walk through, what is entry 111 on that phone?
111 is just is showing the source of that phone call. Once again, showing the 246-6210 number.
And that's just data that was pulled from the phone?
Correct.
All right. And when there's only a couple pages left, we'll go to the next one. What happens in what's been analyzed in your system as number 112? It looks like there's a message sent. Who's it sent from and who's it sent to?
Correct. On June 29th, still at 3:27 p.m., Bart Halderson sends a message to Chandler. It's listed as Chaz Halderson in his phone contacts. It's an instant message that says, "I spoke to Omar Job."
Then the next item analyzed in your system is 113. It's a web history. Is this exactly what it sounds like, internet history?
It is.
Okay. And what does that show, and at what time does it show it?
At 5:39 p.m. on that same date, Bart Halderson Googled Madison Area Technical College.
Okay. And 114?
114 is just showing that the search was completed through Safari.
115?
115 is just the mobile Safari cookies that are attached when you Google Madison Area Technical College.
And the same with 116?
Correct.
What about 117?
117, Bart Halderson is Googling contact Madison College. This would be like a contact list that is on their website.
And in 118, do we see the same source code essentially being repeated?
Correct.
And the same with 119 and 120?
119 is different. That's actually the web history showing employee directory for Madison Area Technical College. So Bart Halderson Googled the employee directory at that time.
Thank you. 120?
120, the associated cookies when you type that search in.
All right. And line 121, could you give us the date and time and then what was done there?
Line 121 is June 29th, 5:40 p.m. Once again, Bart is still in the employee directory.
Okay. 122?
122 is listing employee directory results, and that's at the same time on the same date.
123?
123 is an activity sensor data. This comes from the health app on Apple phones that shows July 1st at 2 p.m.
Okay. And in your experience or knowledge, what is this?
So people that have the health app on their Apple phones, every hour, Apple will document, steps traveled, distance traveled, among other items that you can select to be shown in the app.
Okay. Line 124, if you could give us the date and time of that and what happened.
Line 124 is an instant message. It's July 1st, 2021 at 2:10 p.m. This is an instant message from Bart Halderson to Chandler Halderson.
And what does it read?
Bart wrote to Chandler, "I'm ready whenever you are."
Okay. The next line, 125.
125 is just a duplicate of that same.
Okay. And the very last line here, labeled as 126. What is the date and time of that and what happened?
126 is July 1st, 2021 at 3 p.m. It's also an activity sensor data. That's also just the iPhone health app reporting that there was the last activity at that time.
Okay. And that's when it was uploaded at 3 o'clock?
That was when it was uploaded for the previous hour, correct.
In your review of the records, does it appear that the uploads happens periodically on the hour basis, perhaps?
Every hour.
Okay. After Bart Halderson's phone updated the health app at 3 o'clock on July 1st, 2021, was there ever any activity on that phone again?
There was not.
Judge, if you could just turn the Elmo on, I just want to make sure it can display the relevant messages. And so again, we're looking at exhibit number 498, and we're going to start here. Is this that phone call to Mr. Job that you were talking about?
Yes, it is.
And so we have the date, time, June 29th, 2021, and then the duration of the call. You mentioned the text message shortly thereafter, June 29th, 2021, 3:27, the parties, and then that's the body, correct?
Yes.
Right. And then we start talking about looking up Madison Area Technical College. I'll just display down that page on page 2539. Page 2540. I think this is what we talked about. Some of these are things he's Googling or clicking on, and some are cookies. And we get to line 123. This is the health upload that you were talking about at 2 o'clock?
Correct.
All right. And shortly after that, we see this message at 2:10 on July 1st, 2021 from Bart to Chaz. I'm ready whenever you are.
Yes.
And that was his last message ever sent?
Correct.
And then just as we saw at 2, at 3 o'clock, we see another health upload,
Yes.
and then the page goes blank.
That was the last one.
Okay. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Thank you. Now, the exhibit you just testified about contained more information, more entries than you just talked about, correct?
Yes.
So you just talked about the ones that you and Mr. Brown determined relevant to this investigation, correct?
To this specific point, there's been other references to that attachment.
To this specific point, correct?
Sure.
Now, in looking at Bart Halderson's phone, it's fair to say your investigation looked as much as you possibly could on that phone for potential evidence, correct?
Yes.
That's it, thank you.
Any redirect on that point? No. Thank you, Detective. You can return to the table.
All right. Good afternoon. Could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Stacey Sadoff, Stacey Sadoff.
And what do you do for a living, ma'am?
I'm a digital forensics examiner
With who?
with Wisconsin Department of Justice.
What does a digital forensics examiner do?
We do several things, but to make a long story short, we will look at electronic evidence, so cell phones, computers, thumb drives, tablets, and pull information from those devices and then conduct analysis.
What type of specialized training do you have in the area of digital forensics or phone analysis, things of that sort?
Yes, so I have done training through multiple softwares, digital forensic software specifically, that I've done on and off since I started in 2013.
Sure. I'm showing it's been marked in this case, exhibit number 466. Is that your CV?
Yes.
All right, I'll move 466 into evidence.
Objection.
It is received.
Were you asked to become involved in the case of Mr. Chandler Halderson and the homicides of Bart and Krista Haldersons?
Yes.
What types of things did you do in the investigation?
So in this investigation, I was asked to do cell phone extractions.
Sure. There were a few cell phones brought to your attention in this case.
Yes.
Were you able to access all of them?
No.
What goes into whether you're able to access a phone or not in your job?
So with forensic software, newer phones, we oftentimes struggle with getting into them if they're password protected. So in this case, some devices were newer than others.
Sure. The older the device, the more likelihood that you're going to be able to get into it?
Yes.
Do you stay up to date with the newest technology and trying to break into these iPhones?
Yes, I try.
And it's fair to say Apple is constantly combating privacy issues with their phones and trying to develop phones that can't be broken into.
Yes,
Okay. And it's a back and forth sometimes.
correct.
Okay. So amongst the phones that you were able to access in this case, was one of them the phone of Krista Halderson?
Yes.
So I'm showing you what's been received into evidence as exhibit number 385. And what does that appear to be?
One of the phones that was submitted.
All right. And that has a sticker on it, in fact, indicating that you looked at it or someone in your department.
Yes.
And I'm showing you it's been marked, and received into evidence is 387. Found with this phone, what does that appear to be?
Driver's license
Of who?
of Krista Ray Halderson.
Got it. So with Krista's phone, were you able to perform any sort of extraction?
Yes.
Okay. And you place that on some, it's transferred electronically essentially to prosecutors and defense attorneys and things of that sort?
Yes.
Okay. Just showing you 374. Does that seem to be labeled the extraction of Krista's phone?
Yes.
Okay. I will move 374 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
It is received.
In this case in particular, as you extracted the phone, did you provide that data back to the detectives who were working on the case?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes you review all that data yourself and look for things?
Correct.
But in this case, a good deal of that work was done by the detectives.
Yes.
Okay. Another phone I'm going to ask you about. Is a phone belonging, or that was purportedly Chandler Halderson's old phone. Were you able to review something that you believe to be one of Mr. Halderson's older phones?
Yes.
And why do you think it was an older phone, or what gives you that impression it was an older phone?
The phone was an older make and model as compared to another phone that was submitted that was a newer make and model.
Okay. And in the course of I think what the jury's heard, but if that phone was found in a desk drawer with other phones, that's consistent with people where they just put their old phones?
Yes.
Okay. And did you download that phone as well?
Yes.
Okay. Particularly, I ask you, when you download a phone and when you develop information related to those phones, are you able to see what the passwords are?
Sometimes.
In this case, were you able to see what Krista Halderson's password was?
Yes.
And were you able to see what Chandler Halderson's old iPhone password was, the phone that was found in his room?
Yes.
And what were they?
I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but they were the same.
They were the same password? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
And for the record, does this appear to be that phone, the old Chandler Halderson phone?
Yes.
And that's your lab sticker on it? The
Yes.
white sticker?
Yes.
Okay. Those phones were 4-digit passwords?
Yes.
Okay. And you confirm them to be the same?
Yes.
Okay. One moment. Showing you what's been marked. In this case, as exhibit number 467, page through that and let me know what we're looking at.
My forensic examination report.
And what kind of information, and which phone is that for?
This is for all of them.
Okay. And what information is contained in that report?
The 3 evidence items that were submitted, so it will give information on, for example, phone, make, model, IMEI number, phone number, what kind of extraction was conducted.
Sure. And in this document, can you show us where the breakdown is between the different phones? You said it's all of them?
On page 2 of my forensic examination report, it breaks down the 3 different phones that were submitted.
Understood. Okay, thank you. In one moment, I'm going to page through, make sure we have all of the documents in. We're going to have the detectives testify in a second about some of them, but just give me 1 second. And just referencing again, 267, regarding that passcode, would it help to look at this report to remember what it was?
Yes,
You looked at a lot of data, didn't you?
I did.
Okay. So if we're looking at page, on exhibit 467, starting with the iPhone 6 that we've identified as the phone found in Mr. Halderson's room, it's on page 4,933. Be able to determine a passcode there?
Yes,
And what is that?
2568.
All right. And then if I turn to page 4,936, this is identified as Krista's phone that you downloaded. What's that password?
2568.
No further questions.
Counsel, before I ask about cross, could you double check the exhibit number for the extraction? You said 374, but we have that assigned to something else. I think it was an envelope.
Let me double check it. Yeah.
Okay.
Press. Give me 1 second.
Extraction of what?
The extractum is 574.
574. That's not what you said, according to 2 people up here. Yeah, cross-examination, please.
Yes, thank you. So, just want to clarify something. Earlier, you said that the documents that you just reviewed with Mr. Brown regarded all of them. When we're talking about all of them, we're talking about cell phones, correct?
Yes,
And what is all of them? How many cell phones did you review?
3.
So in particular, we just talked about 2 right now. We talked about an iPhone 6 that was identified as an older iPhone that belonged to Mr. Halderson Chandler, correct?
Yes,
Then we talked about a newer iPhone that was identified as belonging to Krista Halderson, correct?
yes,
These both have the same passwords.
yes.
And then there was a third phone that
Yes.
was, and whose phone was that?
Believed to be the defendant's.
So whatever phone he was using now. or
Correct.
You believe he's using now?
Yes,
And those were the only phones that you were asked to extract data from?
yes.
Out of curiosity, how many phones have you extracted data from? Just a rough number, in general, not just in this case.
Okay. I would estimate between 500 to 1,000.
A lot of phones.
Yes,
And you said that sometimes you can get a full extraction from phones and sometimes you cannot, correct?
correct.
And I believe that has nothing to do with, or it might, but for the most part, it just has to do with whether a phone is newer or older, yes?
Yes,
Newer phones have more protection, more safety components, yes?
correct.
And they're correct, and they're protected by passwords, yes?
Correct.
Now with the passwords, sometimes you're able to get the password on this extraction from the phone and sometimes you're not, correct?
Correct.
And you may not have the right answer for this. I don't think there's a right answer, but out of curiosity, how many times do you think people use birth dates as passwords?
I would say more common than a random number.
How many times have you ever seen the password as 1111?
If I had to estimate, maybe 15%-ish of the time.
It's up there, yeah? No further questions, thank you.
Redirect?
The phone you were not able to access, what model was that?
What model?
Yeah.
It was an iPhone. I don't recall the specific model.
Was it newer than the other ones?
Yes.
And I think, is that the one that you believe to be Mr. Halderson's phone?
Yes.
Using whatever technology you have and whatever password breaking software you have, were you able to break into that phone?
No.
No further questions.
May this witness be excused
Yes.
and released?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
1 second, please. Attorney Brown, do you want to call the next witness?
Detective Sims, back to the stand.
Detective, I'll remind you that you're under the oath that you swore this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Detective. Just as I asked Mr. Shunk some questions about messages on Bart's phone, were you asked to review the downloads that were performed by Ms. Stacey Sadoff, who just testified, the download of Krista Halderson's phone?
Yes, I was.
And specifically, were you asked to look at text messages on that phone?
Yes.
Okay. I'm showing what's been marked in this case is exhibit number 499. Does this appear to be some of those messages that you were able to download, specifically more recent to the homicides?
Yes.
All right. And these are in what we call conversation mode.
Yes, they are.
And briefly, if you could explain conversation mode again for the jury, this is from Cellbrite?
Yes, it's a Cellbrite extraction report of the text messages between Krista and Chandler. And then the conversation view, it actually just appears easier to read. The color is different from the sender and receiver.
Looks a little bit more like a text message.
It does.
Okay. I'll move 499 in evidence and ask to publish it starting at page 3,558.
Any objection?
Nothing further. Thank you.
It is received and may be published.
All right, I'd ask for the Elmo to be turned on. All right. So what we're going to do, I'm going to work with the lighting for one moment. So in green here, is that Krista?
Yes, it is.
All right. And in blue, we're going to see Chandler.
That's correct.
So we're going to start essentially 7 days prior to, or around 8 days prior to when we're talking about everything happening. So on June 23rd, 2021, just to get us used to what this looks like, could you tell us what Krista says to Chandler?
Good night, Chandler. Love you.
All right. Mr. Halderson responds essentially, good night. And then this email, or this text message. I'm going to read it. Let me know if this is correct. HR rep and me are having to attend a board meeting online this afternoon. Our meeting will be online around lunch. I do not have to leave. Sent on June 24th, 2021.
That's correct.
Mrs. Halderson responds, and can you see that?
Yes, I can.
All right, could you read that for us?
Have Dad coach you and have in the wings to help you. Please let him support you or I will come home so I can.
Okay, June 24th. Mr. Halderson responds, sounds good. Is here saved in Krista's phone as Chaz?
That's correct.
Okay. And then same day, a bit later at 1:10 p.m., I'm waiting in the room for him now.
Your Honor, I'm just going to object as leading.
Okay. We'll go to the next
Sustained.
question, or the next text. On the 24th of June at 1:10, what do we see from Krista to Chandler?
Would you like me to come home?
How does Chandler respond that day at 1:15?
I'm all set.
And slightly after that?
I got a list of things from Dad and a bunch of tips.
Staying on the 24th, a message from Krista to Chandler. Now we're at approximately 2:31. Can you tell me what that says?
If you need to pick up check, I can come home, just ask.
At 3:13,
This is to Chandler from Krista. Any news?
and then from Chandler, or Chaz, to Krista Halderson, June 24th at 3:26. What does he say?
I don't need to go anywhere because I have a board meeting until the end of the day.
And then on June 24th at 3:27, that last message, what does that say?
From Krista, did it get solved?
Again, staying on the 24th, a message from Mr. Halderson shortly after that at 3:27. What does he say?
Pretty much just need some approvals and signatures.
Now we're on to June 28th at 1:02 p.m. What does Krista Halderson say to Chaz?
Were you able to make an appointment with MATC?
Again, June 28th, now at 1:02. What does Mr. Halderson say to Krista?
No, there's a line I might be able to skip, so I'm exploring that option.
Then the next, or now we're on to June 30th. Here at 7:22 in the morning, what does Krista send to Chandler?
Thank you for waving. You made my day. Happy face emoji.
Mr. Halderson responds shortly after, saying what?
No problem.
And then what does Krista say at 7:30 p.m. or a.m. on that day?
Love you lots.
On the 30th, message from Krista to Chandler.
Come see us when you are done.
It's at 5:19 p.m.
That's correct.
Mr. Halderson responds with what?
Okay.
Now on to July 1st of 2021, a message from Krista to Chandler at 1:38 p.m. What does that say?
Hope things are going well. Thinking about you. Happy face emoji.
On July 1st, 2021 at 2:34, how does Mr. Halderson respond?
Going well. Thanks.
And what does Krista respond at 2:34 on that day?
With a happy face emoji.
At 3:19 p.m. on July 1st, 2021, what does Chandler text his mother?
Dad's phone died. Text or call me.
Shortly after, another message.
Yeah, from Chandler to Krista. And get soda on your way home. I have an extra hour of work.
And Krista responds,
Okay, I can. Happy face emoji.
and that's at 3:22 on July 1st, correct?
That's correct.
On July 4th, there's no messages. Well, on July 4th will be the next message we'll look at. There's a message from Chandler to Krista on the 4th of July at 11:02 a.m. What does that read?
Hoping this goes through. I bet there's a lot of people up there.
Shortly after, he sends another message. What does that say?
Making it hard to message.
And on July 4th, shortly after that, at 11:04 a.m. So the last message from we just looked at was 11:03 and 7 seconds.
That's correct.
At 11:04 and 23 seconds, Krista Halderson's phone texts Chandler's phone. What does that say?
Made it safely. Can't get anything through. And yes, it's packed. Going to White Lake today for the parade and will be home Monday night, Tuesday early. Love you lots.
The use of the last phrase, love you lots, with exclamation points, that had occurred at other times in the messages with Krista and Chandler?
Yes, it had.
That was a phrase she used.
It appeared so, yes.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Detective Sims, just so I'm clear, that text exchange was extracted from Krista's cell phone?
Yes, that's correct.
So is it safe to assume that you or someone in your investigation looked at all of Krista's text exchanges on her phone, not just the ones with Chandler?
That's correct, we did.
And anything else you could look at on the phone you looked at, correct?
That's correct.
That's it, thank you.
Can you redirect?
No.
Thank you, Detective. You can go back to your seat at the table. Attorney Brown or Raymond?
I'll call Courtney Ripp from the Department of Justice. All right. Could you please state and spell your name for me?
Courtney Ripp, COURTNEY RIPP.
And what do you do for a living?
I am a criminal analyst for the Wisconsin Department of Justice.
What do you do in that job?
As part of my job, I take in copies of original records and make them into visual displays. And that can look like chronological reports, timelines, or cell phone tower maps.
Have you been involved since early on in the case of Chandler Halderson and deceased individuals of Bart and Krista Haldersons?
I have.
And have you worked in conjunction with folks in law enforcement and in your work?
Yes, I have.
Specifically, maybe these detectives over here?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Showing you what's been marked in this case is exhibit number 435. What is that?
This is my CV.
Okay. I'll move 435 into evidence.
No objection.
It is received, and I'll have the record note that it was Detective Sims and Shunk that counsel was referring to, just so that the record reflects which detectives.
Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit about the training you undergo to do your job?
As part of our training, when we first start, we work with a senior analyst who goes over how to do the specifics of our job. They also review all of our products before we send them out. I've also received training from the cell phone companies themselves on how to interpret their records. We are in constant communication with them as things change and shift and how they send us stuff and how the technology upgrades. And I've also taken a class through the FBI about cell phone analysis.
Tell me more about that class. What does that entail?
It really just kind of went over everything that I had already personally experienced, which is the basics of how a cell phone tower operates, the basics of what the individual companies send us with their records, and what those mean and how to in turn map those out.
So, in the course of your duties, have you had the opportunity to look at iCloud records?
I have.
What is iCloud?
iCloud is the system that is native to Apple products, and it is what they use to offer backup services. So long gone are the days of, losing everything with your phone. It can now be backed up to the cloud. And they offer it for free to a specific size, and then after that, it's a paid subscription.
When you say the cloud, just explain what that is.
Really, it's a bunch of servers that are housed in warehouses and other places, big computers that store your information.
Now, if I own an Apple iPhone, you say automatically I get a free iCloud account?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That account I have, does everything on my phone get backed up? Or does it only when I choose things, or can I deselect things?
The user selects what they want to back up, and they can change that at any time.
What are the types of things that one could choose to back up or choose not to back up affirmatively in their phone?
Anything on your phone, honestly. You can decide your contacts, your text message content. Photos are probably the most selected. Any of your applications you can choose to back up. Mail, your email accounts, and notes, different things like that. Anything that's on your phone, you can choose to back up.
And is that something that someone with a phone, they don't need some advanced training to know how to do that? If you go into your settings, you'd be able to figure that out.
That is correct.
Okay. In this case, were you provided an iCloud response from a subpoena that was issued by law enforcement regarding Chandler Halderson's iPhone?
I was.
So while maybe the jury's heard in this case we weren't able to access with a password his phone, you were able to access his iCloud, his backup.
That is correct.
And did you receive that?
I did.
Okay. So I'm showing what's been marked in this case as exhibit number 454. What does that appear to be?
This is the certification of the records from Apple.
Got it. And those are transferred to law enforcement. And what is this labeled?
It is a USB device that contains the Apple/iCloud records.
And that's 455?
Yes, it exhibit 455.
I'll move 454 and 455.
No objection.
They are received.
Now, what types of things did Mr. Halderson have backed up in the cloud?
Images, notes, the contacts. I believe that there were some bookmarks that had been saved, and I don't recall everything else.
You mentioned notes. What are notes?
The notes is a section that you can use it as a notebook. So I use mine for a grocery list, but it's just a free space where you can type in whatever it is that you want.
Okay. And did Mr. Halderson have some notes?
Yes, he did.
Showing it's been marked in this case as exhibit number 456. What does this appear to be?
This is a print-off report that shows the content of the various notes that were contained in that return.
And are these in date order, starting oldest to newest?
That is correct.
Could you tell us what date range these are all in? So the oldest one, then just look at the last page and tell us what the newest one is.
The oldest one is from February 1st, 2018, and the newest was on July 5th, 2021.
Okay. And so I'll move 456 into evidence.
No objection.
It is received.
There are quite a few notes here, right?
There are.
Would you agree that the majority of those are mundane things like lists of things and links and jokes and things of that sort?
That is correct.
Okay. In the course of the investigation, some of those have become more relevant than others?
Yes, they have.
Okay. And for instance, there's one highlighted on the first page, which in the actual page numbers is page 3,174. Could you just read from left to right kind of what you're seeing there and then tell us what that note was?
Okay. The first column shows the email address, the name associated with that email address. The date is August 6th, 2019, and it is at, in military time, 18:14:45, and it says Dad Debit 0730.
Got it. And so appears to be Dad's debit and then a 4-digit number?
Yes.
Okay. Taking you to page 3,176, there's a few notes highlighted there. Would you mind these are all from on Chandler Halderson's phone?
Yes.
Okay, we don't have to read those. Would you mind just telling us the date, the time, and then what the note said? We'll just start from the top.
Okay. On October 12th, 2020, at 10:28:26, the content says, jobs need GPA, transcripts. On the same date, October 12th, 2020, at 18:26:10, college recourses.
And recourse is spelled with a C?
Yes. Okay. On November 23rd, 2020, at 12:46:31, Daniel letterhead with GPA on PDF.
Okay. And then moving to page 3,177, could you tell us the date, time, and the contents of that note?
July 1st, 2021, 17:11:03. Weekend chores, H2O2, lemon, door handles, move your shit upstairs, get a job, clean floor.
These notes are in fairly small print.
They are.
Okay. I'm showing what's been marked as exhibit number 458. Have you seen that before?
I have.
And what is that?
That is the last note that I read, just listed out.
And just read that again, if you could, the contents of the,
Okay.
the note.
Weekend chores, H2O2 lemon, door handles, move your shit upstairs, get a job, clean floor.
Understood. And I'll take that back from you. In military time, this is listed as 1711.
Yes,
So in our time, or what we're looking at, most people conventionally use 511.
yes.
Okay. I'll move 458 into evidence.
No objection.
It is received.
In this case, you were also asked to look at Google records obtained and certified by the Google Corporation, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And did you obtain those for date range starting sometime before the 1st, but all the way through the arrest of Mr. Halderson on the 8th?
That is correct.
Showing you what's been marked in this case is exhibit number 442, all the way through the last ones, 459 or 449. Do those appear to be the Google activity for Chandler Halderson at gmail.com?
It is.
And is that from the 1st all the way through the 8th?
It is.
Okay. And a question for you. Well, I'll move 442 through 449, excuse me.
No objection.
They are received.
On exhibit number 442, which is Chandler Halderson at gmail.com activity from July 1st, there's not much there, but what do we see?
There are various YouTube searches that are listed here with the link and the title of what it is specifically that they watched.
Sure. YouTube is a company owned by Google?
That is correct.
Okay. So if someone goes on YouTube and watches something, that would log onto their Google account associated with their email?
That is correct.
Okay. Are there any searches performed that day or any other Google activity that you're able to see?
No.
What could account for there not being any searches there?
That there were no searches conducted or that the information had been deleted.
And do you know one way or another which one it was here?
I do not.
Okay. So 442 is July 1st. On July 2nd, 443, exact same thing?
Exact same thing. Different searches, different videos watched, but only the YouTube history.
Okay. 444, July 3rd, same thing?
Same thing.
445, dealing now with the 4th of July. What are we looking at there?
Again, YouTube searches and YouTube history.
446, dealing with Google activity on July 5th. What are we looking at there?
YouTube history.
447, July 6th, again, more YouTube history.
That is correct.
On 448 and 449, July 7th and 8th, we're able to see more information.
That is correct.
All right. So let's start talking about exhibit number 448. In general, there's a few pages of things here. A good deal of these entries. Let's start with, is he searching anything on Google?
There are searches that are listed here in the maps section, so directions to specific places.
Can you tell me what those were and what time they were searched on? And this is, again, July 7th?
July 7th at 9:36 and 38 seconds in the morning. Irwin Road, Cottage Grove, Wisconsin was searched. And then the next second later, so at 9:36:39 a.m., there were directions to that address, Irwin Road, Cottage Grove, Wisconsin.
Okay. There's a good deal of entries here that are Google Maps. Is that what happens when a user starts looking into the map interface?
That is.
Okay. Moving into 10 in the morning or so, are there some more Google searches?
Yes.
Tell me what those Google searches are.
At 10:19:57 in the morning, White Lake Police Department, White Lake Township Police Department. At 10:20:15, White Lake Police Department, Wisconsin. And that was searched several times. White Lake Township Police Department. Again, that continues several more times. At 10:21:44, Wabeno Police Station. 10:22:31. It's a homepage for the village of White Lake, Langlade County, Wisconsin. At 10:22:40, there was a personnel directory lookup in the village of White Lake in Langlade County. At 10:24, there was an area that was viewed in Google Maps. At 10:26 a.m., the search term BDO. 10:41 a.m., BDO's Madison CPA firm was a link that was selected. 10:58:40, BDO Madison. 11:33:04, Sawyer Lake, Wolf River, Wisconsin. Several different locations were viewed in the Google Map application. At 12:25:36, there was a Google search for Zimbrick Volkswagen repair shop near me, with a follow-up of the Zimbrick Volkswagen of Madison Service Center. And that address was then utilized in the map application. At 13:51:19 p.m., Sawyer Lake, Wolf River, Wisconsin directions were pulled up. Lots more map activity. At 14:03:18, there was a Google search for 4200 police code. 14:08:38, radio codes, Signals, Rhode Island. And then at 15:23:26, the search term AICPA was put in several times.
Okay. And that was all on July 7th, 2021?
That was all on July 7th, 2021.
Okay, and so we have 1 day left. Fair to say Exhibit 449, which is July 8th, it includes some YouTube entries, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and not looking at those, but what was searched either in Maps or Google searched, could you go through that, give us the time, and then just walk us through what was searched that day? So on July 8th, 2021.
So July 8th, 2021, 9:44:30 a.m., body found Wisconsin. 9:44:41, women's body found in Wisconsin. 9:44:50, Wisconsin dismembered body found. 9:45:07, State versus Peter T. Capuzza, Wisconsin court system. 9:45:25, dead body found in Wisconsin. 9:45:40, body found in Milwaukee River, 2021. There is a search for a Journal Sentinel online article. At 15:12:46, Bart and Krista. 15:12:49, Madison area couple last seen a week ago may have headed to, and then an ellipsis.
I lost you.
It's the three dots.
Ellipsis.
Yeah. At 15:12:54, Madison area couple last seen a week ago may have, and then it cuts off. These seem to be all links that were related to the search. 15:30, 15:13:48. They got picked up and left with another couple. Son not sure. 15:13:51. They got picked up and left with another couple. 15:15:01. Update. Dane County authorities need help searching for missing. 15:15:05. Dane County authorities need help searching for. And then there are various entries in here for map searches. And it doesn't specifically say the area that was viewed in the map application.
Understood. And in 449, when you read the Google searches, body found Wisconsin, Wisconsin dismembered body found, those were actual searches performed in the Google website, essentially.
That is correct.
And when you read those longer descriptions, such as Madison area couple last seen a week ago, what do those appear to be?
Those appear to be links that returned as a result of the search. So in this particular instance, the Google search itself was Bart and Krista, and then the ones that followed were links that were clicked on related to that search.
Sure. Judge, I would move to publish 449 just to display that.
Very good.
So again, we're looking at exhibit number 449, and as we go through this, for instance, that's what you're referencing when we talk about a YouTube video,
Yes,
and this might be a video game, essentially, that's being looked into.
correct.
Okay. And so when we say Google search on this side, right here, I'll move over so everyone can see the time at 9:44, that's the item that was searched, body found Wisconsin?
That is correct.
Okay. And what I'll do is I'll zoom out just a tad so that that time is visible, and I'll just slowly move the exhibit up to display the whole thing. And so as we get down to the bottom, these are these the links that Mr. Halderson or his Google account clicked on?
That is correct. You can see after the google.com/, it changes from search to the URL.
Understood. Which differentiates from the actual Google search for something like body found with Wisconsin, which is /search and then the query.
Correct.
I'm going to draw your attention to one of the searches or one of the links, which is the state versus Peter Capuzza. Did you in fact go and find what that was, that link that was clicked on?
I did.
In general, what was that?
It was the court case involving a man who was accused of murdering and dismembering a female relative of his, and the way he dealt with the remains.
Okay. And there were some legal issues related to that?
Correct.
Okay. And we're not going to talk about the legal issues, but I'm showing you Exhibit 357. Is that the Court of Appeals decision that was clicked on in that link after Mr. Halderson looked into State versus Peter Capuzza?
It is.
Okay. I'll move 457 into evidence.
No objection.
457?
Yes.
It is received.
This legal decision's many pages long. However, I would ask the witness, if it's okay with you, Judge, to read simply the first paragraph starting with the description of the judge who wrote the decision, just that entire first paragraph, and stopping at where it says background.
Is it from the opinion or is it the editorial summary?
It appears to be the editorial summary at the top.
Any objection?
No objection.
Okay, it may be read.
And so I'll have you start with the name Peter Capuzza and read from that point forward. You do not, I think it's okay if you do not read the statutory numerical sections as you go through it. I think
Thank you.
that would be hard to understand.
Peter Capuzza was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide and hiding a corpse with intent to conceal a crime. The prosecutor presented evidence that Capuzza killed his cousin, Wivano Mushambe.
You can use initials.
Capuzzi, M.M. Capuzza, cut up her body and disposed of the parts in the Wisconsin River. Capuzza argues that the trial evidence was insufficient to sustain his convictions and that evidence relating to a trained dog, which allegedly detected large amounts of human blood residue in Capuzza's apartment, was improperly admitted. We conclude that the evidence was sufficient to support Capuzza's convictions and that any error in admitting evidence related to the dog was harmless error. We affirm the convictions.
Thank you. So when we talk about the Capuzza decision, going back to Exhibit 449, 9:45 in the morning on the 8th of July, correct?
That is correct. It was at 9:45:08, yes.
Now, in this case, I think you started, we asked you what you did for a living, and you mentioned that part of your job is mapping and timelines and things of that sort.
That is correct.
We talk about mapping, we talk about cell phone mapping.
That is correct.
Is that something you regularly do in your job?
It is probably the most common thing that we do.
Okay. In cell phone mapping, you're concerned with tower records, cell phone tower records?
Yes.
Okay. Talk to me about how cell phone towers work.
Typically, there are 3 sides to a tower, and the side of the tower that's used is going to be the strongest tower that the phone chooses to be able to support a communication. So when we get phone company records back, it gives us a side of the tower that was used that gives us directionality for possible travel and things like that. They typically keep records, the cell phone companies typically keep records for their own business purposes, who people are communicating with, the times that are used, how long the communications last, and they keep all of that so they can provide better support to their customers. The tower ranges typically for 3 to 5 miles, but it can cover as far as up to 10 miles, depending on the area, what the population is, what the needs are of their consumers. So in more urban areas, you're going to have less coverage, but you're going to have many more towers. Then in rural areas, you're going to have fewer towers that have much larger coverage areas.
When it comes to cell phone records, do you need to activate your phone? Do you need to do anything affirmatively on your phone throughout the day for it to be connecting to cell phone towers?
Not necessarily.
Tell us about that.
So throughout the day, the carrier is constantly sending updates to your phone to figure out where you might be. Your phone may be reaching out to get updates for different applications that might be utilized on your device. But your phone is always reaching out to figure out what tower is going to provide the best strength and the best support for the next communication that you choose to make.
Do sometimes, in a very short period of time, do sometimes phones connect and reach out to multiple towers?
That is correct.
And in those cases, you're able to determine directionality and distance based off 3 different locations or 2 different locations?
Possibly, yes.
And does that assist you in providing a perhaps more precise location of where someone is?
It can.
Okay. Cell phone tower data itself is an approximate location, or is it an exact location of where someone is?
It gives a general side of the tower that's utilized for a communication. So again, that coverage can go anywhere from 0 to up to 10 miles, depending on that particular tower. So it generally gives us a side of the tower that is used.
Is it always the same? If you and I both have Verizon and we're sitting in this room together right now, is it always the same exactly whose phone's connecting to what tower in an urban area?
It should be.
Does it always work out that way?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. Sometimes when looking at cell phone tower records, do you see towers that are maybe way off in the distance blink on for moments and then go away and never be used again?
I do.
What does that mean, or what does that look like?
It could jump back to an earlier data session for a moment, or it could be that the tower really isn't the best to support that connection. So then it jumps off to a different tower to maybe handle the rest of that communication. More often we see that with data records.
In this case, the relevant phones of Bart, Krista Halderson, Chandler Halderson, and even Chandler's brother Mitchell, that was all U.S. Cellular?
That is correct.
Okay. And U.S. Cellular tower data was collected via subpoena and provided to you in this case?
It was.
And I'm showing you exhibits number 438, 439. What does 438, the top one, appear to be?
It is a certificate of authenticity from U.S. Cellular.
And is that what they provide when they turn this data over usually?
It is.
And 439?
It is a USB drive that is labeled U.S. Cellular phone records.
I'll move 438 and 439.
No objection.
They are received.
When these records are received, are they in an easy to view fashion, or do you have to do something to them to make them to be able to comprehend what they're saying?
U.S. Cellular records are a little bit tricky. They do come in an electronic format, so they're easy to open up, but you do definitely use the training that you have received over the years to be able to interpret those records a little bit better. The most common thing to do is to adjust the time zone so they're all in Central Time.
Sure. And you said mapping at the beginning. What do you do? What does that mean to you when you take tower records and you're going to map them? What is that?
So we have a list of towers that are provided by U.S. Cellular that lists all of their tower locations and the degrees which each sector of the tower covers. And when we match up the phone records, we use the tower that they provide in the phone records and match it up to the tower list and just connect it to the same tower name. And then we're able to use that latitude and longitude and the sector that's indicated to determine how it's mapped out.
And when we talk about the map, what is the map? Is that your own created map, or what map do you use to overlay this data onto?
The map layer that is shown most commonly is Google Maps. And we can change that to reflect satellite imagery, where you see the roads and the landscape, trees, and such.
When doing mapping, do sometimes you use Snapchat records?
Yes.
Specifically Snapchat location data?
Yes, we can.
Talk to me about Snapchat. When you're talking about mapping, we talked about cell phone records. What does Snap add to the puzzle sometimes?
So Snapchat users can select whether or not they want to share their location with all of their friends, some of their friends, or no one. And when you do that and you open up your Snapchat to actively use it to message or post a story, whatever you may be choosing to use, Snapchat is collecting your location information. So anything that has a latitude and longitude provided with it, we can generally add to our maps with the cell phone location data.
Sure. Is this data more precise or less precise than cell phone tower records?
It is more precise.
Sure. Is it always exactly spot on?
No.
Tell me about that.
So there are areas of accuracy with any precision locate. So even if you open up your phone and you open up your navigation app, it may show you off the road. So there's always an element to you drifting off of where you actually are. And it's based off a number of things. And that can include the number of satellites that are used in the area, if there are any blockages or obstructions, like trees, buildings. And it can also depend on how your phone is connected to the network as well. If you're connected to a Wi-Fi network, it's gonna be more precise because Wi-Fi networks are small, and therefore you have to be closer to it to be able to connect. So more precise.
When you map Snapchat records, if we think of it as like a dot on a map that you're pointing down, do you ever come across records where those dots will be in one location and then you'll see a random one way off in the distance, which maybe couldn't exist unless someone was teleporting there, and then it appears back at the spot it's been the whole time? Have you ever seen that?
Yes.
What is that called, or what is that?
It's something that's referred to commonly as drift. And so again, it just, depending on how well connected your phone is to the network or how visible it is to the satellites or different ways that it's using to narrow down your location, you could drift away from where you actually are.
Sure. For that reason, is it important to look at the number of times that Snap is locating or updating your data into the system?
That is correct.
Okay. So did you obtain records from Snapchat in this case regarding the location of Chandler Halderson's Snapchat account or his phone that was connected to that account?
I did.
And is that certification exhibit number 440?
Yes,
And does 441 appear to be the USB containing those records?
it does.
If you could for me, on 440, on the second page, are you able to identify the username that this file was in regards to?
It is related to the Snapchat account Chazzle Dazzle.
I'll move 440 and 441 into evidence.
No objection.
It is received. They are received, I should say.
Thank you. So we talked a lot about the cell phones and we talked about Snapchat. You did do some mapping in this case.
I did.
Okay. Showing what's been marked in this case as exhibit number 573. What does that appear to be?
This is the work product that I created that shows the summary of all of the mapping.
Okay. And is 436 essentially a container for the USB containing that map?
Yes.
All right. I'll move 436 and 573 into evidence.
No objection.
They are received.
And I'd ask to publish.
You may.
I'll need the lefty.
Gemma?
Ms. Ripp, the screen in front of you is going to come on. We're going to be able to look at some images together. Let's see if we can't look at this in the best fashion. All right. So let's just talk about this first page. What are we looking at there?
This is just my introductory slide that shows a list of all of the telephone numbers that I reviewed. The tags indicate that there is a chronological report associated with that. And it gives the refresher that sectors are represented by that pie-shaped icon, and that they're drawn out to represent 1.5 miles. And that's not necessarily the area of coverage by a particular tower, it's just for visual representation. And there's also a notation that the device that was used by Bart Halderson had no outgoing communications or data records associated with it after approximately 2:30 p.m. on July 1st, 2021. The device used by Krista Halderson had limited activity on July 2nd and was active for a short time around 11:02 a.m. on July 4th, 2021, which corresponds with a text message exchange.
Excellent. And so as we go through this, when we see that the sector symbol or that pie-shaped icon, we're talking about that directionality from the tower that you talked about?
That is correct.
When we talk about, and eventually we may get to data from Snapchat, how is that depicted on these maps?
There will be a legend that indicates it's going to be a circle shape.
Okay. And you were asked to look into July 1st, 2021, all the way through the date of Mr. Halderson's arrest on the 8th.
That is correct.
Okay. So let's start on July 1st of 2021. We'll walk through this slide if we could. What are we looking at there?
You can see the legend on the left-hand side indicates the colors associated with each individual's phone records. This shows all three phones for the duration of July 1st. You can see that the red and the green sectors representing Bart and Chandler, and the small circles, they're kind of clustered together near the icon for the residents. Those all seem to stay somewhat stationary, but you can see that the purple sectors travel down to the Madison area, between the residents and the Madison area.
Understood. And so when we look at this piece of data, there's a notation where all of those clusters are at the very top, just top center. It says Bart and Krista's residence. Is that one of the locations that you were provided to map out that was important in this case?
I was.
And there's a couple of those, are there not?
Yes.
And you were provided that information by detectives?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Some of these we're going to look at animated maps. Tell us about what an animated map is when we talk about cell phone records.
So what that allows us to do is look at the records as they occur in somewhat real time. So it plays them along so we can see the context surrounding those locations before and after and where they go in between.
And when it came to picking which time periods to map out, you worked with detectives and me, essentially, to figure out which ones were maybe more relevant?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to click on, see if I can do this right. So here we have an animated map on July 1st, 2021 from around noon to midnight, so the last 12 hours of the day. And are we going to see all of these folks, Chandler, Krista, and Bart, are we going to see their cell phones when we look at this?
Yes.
Because it's the first one we're looking at, I'm just going to ask you a couple questions. That purplish color at the bottom, is that Krista Halderson?
That is.
And the green, is that Chandler Halderson?
It is.
And here he's near his residence, essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
And the red that showed up, that was Bart's device. And you can also see that the towers that they utilize the most when they're at home bounce between 2 or 3 different sectors of various towers. And those provide the best coverage at that time for those communications.
And Mr. The timestamp that's in those sectors, is that in fact the actual time that those records are from?
Yes.
Okay, so we're now moving to 4:20 p.m., 4:30 p.m. around this time?
Yes.
Okay.
And fairly soon you will start seeing Krista's phone utilizing towers that end up covering her residence. And again, you can consistently see that the Snapchat locations and the cell phone tower usage is consistent with the devices being at the residence. And we're getting close to 9:00 p.m. And 10:00. $11. And that was the last location.
Okay. Going to the next map, we're still on July 1st of 2021. What are we looking at here?
Because that first map showed all 3 phones for the same time frame, I split them out. So here we can see a little bit closer up view of Chandler's location records, whether they're the Snapchat, which you can see a little bit clearer as the small circles, and the green sectors.
When you talk about the Snapchat circles, it's our first time maybe getting a closer look at them. Are they just underneath the little icon for Bart and Krista's residence?
Yes, they are.
And there's a cluster there?
Yes.
Okay. And so is this Chandler throughout the day?
It is. So it shows consistent data session tower coverage from about 12:29 a.m. through 11:17 p.m. There are a few calls that took place, including an incoming call from Krista at 3:19:39 p.m.
Going to the next slide, we're still on July 1st. I think you said you were going to separate folks out. Is this Bart?
This is Bart.
All right. And what's notable about this slide, or what can you tell us?
So as it was summarized on the first slide that I read over, there is no cellular activity related to this phone number or this device after 2:32 p.m. Otherwise, it shows consistent usage throughout the morning into the early afternoon, with data sessions starting as early as 12:40 a.m. And you can see that there were 3 phone calls that utilized these towers.
Next slides, now we're on to just the isolated view of Krista on July 1st. Tell us what we're looking at there.
This one shows very clearly the movement of the phone down to the near east side of Madison from the home. So you can see that she left the house around 7:29 a.m. and arrived approximately 10-ish minutes later, starting to utilize some of those towers off of Highway 151. And you can see that that tower was consistently utilized until 4:56 p.m. And then there's the travel back to the residence with the data sessions picking back up at 5:33 p.m. and utilized close to midnight.
Sure. Despite the phone being used, you're not able to tell in your work who was using the phone after 5 p.m. that night?
That is correct.
I asked you to put Mitchell Halderson on this slide, correct?
You did.
And Mr. Halderson was the whole day nowhere near the residence?
That is correct.
Okay. Going into the second, tell us what we're looking at here.
It's the same sort of pattern, a lot of usage around the residence. There is one change in it that the tower to the south is using the western side of the tower to support communications or data usage in this particular instance between 7:07 and 7:22 in the morning of July 2nd. But the rest of the tower activity is consistent with being at the residence or near the residence.
For the entire day?
For the entire day.
The one data session that occurs that you were able to map, it's from 7:07 a.m. to 7:22 a.m., the one that's a bit farther away from the house, the Google overlaid street map lists some businesses, does it not?
It does.
And what businesses directly in the center of that sector?
Fleet Farm.
Again, sticking with July 2nd, what are we looking at there?
This is the activity for Krista's phone on July 2nd. You can see that there are no longer data sessions related to that device after 6:41 in the morning.
Again, same question, you're not able to tell who's using that device at that time?
That is correct.
Same question as before. I asked you to just throw Mitchell Halderson's location on there. Again, he's in the Verona area that whole day?
That is correct.
Okay. Let's talk about July 3rd. Saturday, July 3rd, 2021. What are we looking at here?
This one is a little bit busier, and it covers just from midnight until noon on July 3rd. And the way that this kind of plays out is that there's a lot of activity around the home until about shortly about 9 o'clock in the morning. And then the phone travels down along the lake near Madison, heads up northwest. And there are some data sessions around that area that has a box surrounding it. And that is activity that occurred from 8:26 a.m. till 9:02 a.m. Then as you follow that around to the north, there is a tower that's utilized across the river, very towards the top of the map, that's utilized for a phone call. And then you can see it shifts back down to tower 550101, and that one's utilized for the next call. And then you can see that the phone then travels back to the residence and then heads actually down to the Madison area from 10:35 until 11:51 a.m. So it's kind of like a big circle.
Sure. And we're going to look at this map a little bit further. But here we only see Chandler and Chandler's Snapchat. Was there any activity from Krista Halderson or Bart Halderson's phone that day?
No.
And nothing would appear on this map?
No.
Okay. And then just so everyone is looking at the map and can see everything, again, you labeled Bart and Krista's residence on that map?
Yes.
All right. The area that has the box around it, the black box, are we going to look at that further and a little bit closer in?
We will.
And is that the area around Prairie du Sac or just north of Sauk City, Wisconsin?
Yes.
Okay. And then just for everyone's reference, that very top tower that only had one entry at one point, that's just south of Devil's Lake?
Yes.
Okay. You were asked to animate from 7:30 to 9:30?
That is correct.
All right, and we'll look at that.
So again, this just shows kind of in real time what these records look like to give more context, and it's probably easier to understand than listening to me try to describe it.
I think you're doing a fine job, but I'll just note, here you've put an additional label on. So we have Bart and Krista's residence labeled, and then there's another label by Prairie du Sac. What does that say?
It says remains found approximate.
And was that the location given to you by detectives?
It was.
Okay.
What is different on this animation versus the static map will be the arcs that are drawn out away from the sector, and those are an approximate distance that was provided by the cell phone company.
In dealing with this day, still on Saturday, July 3rd, that location far to the left in which it appeared that Mr. Halderson's phone moved and stayed for a good period of time in the morning, did you do some closer-up imaging of the tower records as it relates to that location?
I did.
Okay. And tell us what we're looking at here.
So this map shows the towers that cover that particular area and were used by the device. You can see that there's pretty consistent usage from approximately 8:26 a.m. through 9:02:38 a.m. And you can also see that there is an arrow pointing near the red icon, and there are some there's a very small dot in there. That is a Snapchat location, and there are 2 entries for that particular location.
And you mapped that and took out the cell phone data so you could see that more clearly?
I did.
And is that what we're looking at in this slide?
It is.
And if we look at the very bottom of the screen, is that the location where you've been indicated by detectives to place the remains found?
It is.
Again, staying with July 3rd, so again, they're still on Saturday, July 3rd. This is the other half of the day, the afternoon into the evening?
It is.
Okay. What are we looking at here?
This map shows the device traveled up to the Portage, Wisconsin area on the evening of July 3rd. So around shortly after 10:15, the device started traveling north, utilizing towers along the way, and stayed in the Portage area from approximately 10:37 p.m. to 11:03 p.m. And then it returned back to the area of the residence closer to 11:24 p.m.
And you animated this as well?
I did.
All right, let's take a look at that. From 10:30 to 11:30?
Yes.
And again, if you could explain those arcs that we're seeing.
So the arcs are an approximate distance from the tower, and that's the cell phone company's best estimate as to where the device may be. And they give it to us in miles and segments thereof. And so when you have more of them intersecting at a particular location, that gives more credence to their accuracy of that particular distance from the tower. And so you can see as it gets closer to the tower, you can see the lines get closer within the green sector. As the device tends to move away, you can see them expanding out away from the tower, which again, it just gives a little bit more directionality.
Again, you mapped Mitchell Halderson that day. He was in the Verona area all day.
That is correct.
Okay. Talk to me about July 4th. What are we looking at there?
July 4th, Krista's phone has activity for the first time in several days, and it's only for a short time frame. The rest of this map is showing Chandler's device usage, where the device seems to travel down to the Madison area, where it stays for just over 2.5 hours, and then it tends to travel over to the Cottage Grove area, where it is from approximately 3:43 p.m. to 6:51 p.m., and then it returns back up to the residence around 7:29 p.m. And again, in the details of the next slide will show what the communications within that black box.
Sure. And we'll go to that next box. Here, you've mapped the residence area on July 4th, 2021, from 11:02 a.m. to 11:09 a.m. Is this the first time, I think you said in several days, you see Krista's phone have activity?
That is correct.
And what can you tell us from this slide? What are we looking at?
This, Krista's particular tower usage was inclusive of some data session records that occurred from 11:02 to 11:04 a.m. And this is also where there was an outgoing message to Chandler's device at 11:04:23.
And was that the message listed there? Made it safely, can't get anything through though, and yes, it's packed. Going to White Lake today for the parade, and be home Monday night, Tuesday early. Love you lots.
That is correct.
Okay. That message was sent from Windsor, Wisconsin,
It was.
not White Lake, Wisconsin.
That is correct.
Briefly going back to the last slide before we move forward, the location on the bottom right of that screen on the 4th of July from 3 to just before 7, we're going to talk more about that location as we go further in other days, but that's the general location of the Irwin Road Farm?
It is.
Okay. All right. Again, I ask you to map Mitchell. He was in the Verona area all day?
Yes.
Talk to me about July 5th. What am I looking at here?
So July 5th shows the device activity for Chandler's phone. It appears that it was pretty consistent at the residence throughout the day until about 4:30 p.m. And then the device tends to move south along the interstate and heads out to the Irwin Farm address until about 6:54. Then it heads back to the Madison area where it stays for a while. You can see some activity from 7:10 to 8:34 p.m. There's some call activity there, and then it appears to return to the residence around 8:52 p.m.
Bart and Krista, their phone's not active this day at all?
That is correct.
Okay. And you animated that trip down to what you described as the Irwin Road property. You animated that, and it goes from 4:30 to 9 o'clock?
Yes.
All right, we'll take a look at that. So this is, again, July 5th, Monday.
And again, with the arcs, when they start to intersect, that tends to give more credence or more weight to the approximate location of that particular device.
In case anyone's having trouble seeing, would you mind telling us about the time we're at now?
It is about 6:30. And we are approaching 7 o'clock. And you can see the device is starting to head away from that Cottage Grove area. And we're at 8 o'clock.
And as we approach 9 o'clock, it appears that phone ends up back at the home.
Yes.
Same day, we're still on Monday, July 5th. What are we looking at there?
This is a particular time frame of noon to 4 p.m. on July 5th, and it shows that the device is consistently at the residence with data sessions active pretty consistently from 12:05 p.m. to 3:59 p.m.
Sure. And in fact, just to be clear, I'm the one who asked you to put this map together?
Yes.
Okay. I'm showing you what's been marked in this case and received as exhibit number 536. You may not have seen these before, but these appear to be text messages between someone named, what is the top?
Hubby
And who?
and Catherine.
All right, and I'll represent to you that it's been testified in this case that these are messages between Chandler and his girlfriend. Just briefly, could you read through the first couple of pages of those, and you can just start with the start time there and then read through?
July 5th, 2021 at 12:35:05 p.m. The message says, 1 sec. The response from Catherine at 12:35:08, okay, okay, then another response at 1:31:46 p.m., text me when you get to your appointment. The message from Chandler says, yes, dear. That is at 1:32:30. The response from Catherine at 1:33:25, good boy. The response from Chandler at 1:40:09 p.m., thanks, B. The response from Catherine at 1:40:24 p.m., 1:40:26, I love you. 1:40:30, it's gonna be okay. 1:41:05 from Chandler, either way, you and me are gonna be happy. 1:59:37 from Catherine, very true. Response from Chandler at 2:01:53, made it a bit ago and checked in. 2:01:56 from Chandler, BRB. 2:09:12 from Catherine, you got this, B. 2:18:56 p.m. from Catherine, yeah, question mark. 2:19:18 from Catherine, am I picking you up? I'm off at 5. 2:20:19 from Chandler, just need you to know because I have horrible reception. And that same message is resent at 2:22:10 p.m. At 2:22:43 from Catherine, okay. At 2:22:52 p.m. from Catherine, do they gave Wi-Fi? At 2:23:07 p.m., we can snap if that's easier. At 2:23 p.m. from Chandler, no connection to even load Snapchat. At 2:23:42 p.m. and no Wi-Fi. 2:23:54, but I can still get your iMessages. At 2:24:17 from Chandler, no connection to even load Snapchat. 2:24:17 p.m. and no Wi-Fi. From Catherine at 2:24:34, that's good. 2:24:42 p.m. from Catherine, and weird that they all gave it. 2:24:46, have it. At 2:24:54 from Catherine, but maybe it's your carrier. From Chandler at 2:25:26. I'll try and get it on. And that message is received or resent at 2:27:18 p.m. At 2:31:21 p.m. from Catherine, let me know what happens. At 3:25:08 p.m. from Chandler, hi hun, 3:25:10, heading home. 3:25:48, they took an x-ray and CT scan, nothing bad on the x-ray.
All right, and I appreciate you doing that. And just clarity of the record, we're talking about exhibit number 536, and just confirm the date again for me.
It is July 5th, 2021.
Essentially in the afternoon.
That is correct.
Okay. Did you perform an animation between 12 and 4 p.m. on that day?
I did.
Let's take a look at it. If you could read off the times in increments, if you could.
So we're approaching 12:30. 1 o'clock. 2 o'clock. 3 o'clock.
4. The phone stays in the same general vicinity as the residence during that time period?
Yes.
Okay. Going back, because again, we're staying on July 5th. In the bottom right corner of this overall map of Mr. Halderson's locations on July 5th, there's a square. Is that around the Irwin Road property?
It is.
And were you able to look at that a little bit closer for a trip out there in the afternoon and even the evening of July 5th?
I was.
Okay, we'll go ahead. What are we looking at there?
This specifically shows only the Snapchat locations that occurred during that particular time frame. You can see that they start around 6:08:16 p.m. and the last one on the screen is at 6:53:32 p.m.
Sure. And I think we talked about it earlier, but I'm going to draw your attention to something specifically here. In the Snapchat list of data points here, for instance, there's the first one, which is at 6:15:42 p.m.?
Yes.
If we look far right across that big farm field in another farm, it looks like, at 6:15 and 28 seconds, so just 15, 20 seconds before, there's a couple times where it hit right there.
Yes.
What do you believe that is, or do you have any opinion as to what that looks to be?
It could be an example of the drift. It's claimed, the accuracy on it is fairly good, but again, it can be the accuracy of the overall location itself can be thrown off due to various things, obstructions from buildings or trees, the lack of, the possible satellites that are around, what kind of connection it has, the device itself has to some sort of network, whether it's data or Wi-Fi, things like that can throw it off.
So on 3 different occasions on that farm on the right, there appeared to be a data location that came through.
Yes.
And you put that on the map?
Yes.
Because you put everything on the map that you got?
Those are the records.
Okay. On the far left, there's more Snapchat locations on that side?
Yes.
Okay. And did you zoom in on that side?
I did.
All right. Tell me what we're looking at there.
So this, again, is just showing up a closer satellite view. So it adds more context to where the locations are. You can see that there are several locations associated with the circle to the south on the map. Several of them are kind of stacked up in between each other with varying levels of degree of accuracy associated with them. And it takes part in kind of a small time frame, within a matter of 8 seconds. And then there's one location that's captured on the driveway or just around that area near the driveway at 6:08 p.m.
Do you know, so we talked about cell phone records are constantly maybe reaching out and talking to the phones. Is Snapchat doing the same, or is this when people affirmatively use the app, or do you know?
It's when they're using the app.
Okay. So if Mr. Halderson's Snapchat the app would not have been opened on July 5th, we wouldn't just see these naturally as some sort of handshakes that the system is performing.
Correct. That's my understanding of it.
Okay. For some clarity's sake, the dot that you put for the Irwin Road Farm, to the left of that, it appears to be an actual blue dot on the screen. That maybe is the swimming pool that we've heard about in this case?
That's what I've been told.
Okay. Again, I asked you to map Mr. Mitchell Halderson. He stayed home all day?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about July 6th. Tell us what we're looking at there.
July 6th shows the movement of Chandler's device from the residence, and it moves fairly early in the morning. You can see the locations down at the south part of the map near Madison. There are data sessions there occurring shortly after 5 a.m. And then the phone does move back up to the residence where it maintains its location until that evening, where there is a trip down to the east side of Madison area near the interstate, and then it returns back to the residence.
Sure. I think you mentioned, and just so there's some clarity, there was you said an early morning trip kind of into the downtown area?
Yes.
What time does it appear that trip, if you had to give a range based on the records that you have?
The gap in the data sessions near the house are from 4:32 a.m. to 5:37 a.m. So it would have been around that time, which matches with the tower location that I highlighted at 5:05 a.m.
Understood. Again, I asked you on July 6th to just map where Mitchell was, and he was home again?
Correct.
Okay. On this day, we see a couple of things from Mitchell's phone listed there. What do we have?
There are some outgoing calls one outgoing call to Bart and one outgoing call to Krista.
Let's talk about July 7th. July 7th, 2021, Bart and Krista, their phone's not active.
Correct.
And they weren't active the day before?
Correct.
Okay. What are we looking at here on July 7th?
So these records are showing us the movement of the device down out to the Irwin farm. Again, this time it occurs between 9:30 a.m. and 11 o'clock a.m. Then the device seems to remain consistently at the residence throughout the evening.
Okay. And did you animate the trip down to that black square, the Irwin Road area?
I did.
And that's from 9:30 to 11 a.m. And we'll watch that together. That location in that black box down at Irwin Road, were you able to see some of those sector lines a little more clearly in that location in this mapping than perhaps you always are?
Yes,
Okay. And you did some closer ups of that location?
I did.
All right. So here we're looking at general time period around 10 in the morning. I think the earliest is 9:57, all the way through maybe 10:14 or so. What are we looking at there?
So these are primarily the data sessions that were used during this time by that device. And you can see that there's a number of arcs that kind of intersect all at one point, and that happens to be near the location where I have the marker identified as Irwin Road Farm.
And if we go to the next slide, sticking on July 7th, is that a closer up of that farm
It is.
and those sector lines intersecting?
It does.
On that day, I asked you to map for Mitchell Halderson as well.
Yes.
Again, he stayed in the Verona area all day.
Yes.
He had some activity, though, on his phone related to calling Bart and Krista.
Yes.
What times did he make those calls?
11:45, 4:50, 5:47 p.m., 8:27 p.m., and 9:12 p.m.
Moving to July 8th, 2021, the last day that we're going to talk about. Just what are we looking at there?
This shows the device activity related to Chandler's device, and it remains consistently at the residence up until about 4:15 p.m. There are no records between 4:15 and 7:55 p.m., but then you see the next data session towers that are utilized are down in the Madison area.
And in fact, that tower might be close to where we are right now.
Quite likely.
Okay. In the vicinity of the Dane County Jail.
Yes.
Okay. Could you talk to me about Mr. Halderson's activity on his phone that day? I think you have listed in that box on the right.
There were some incoming and outgoing calls to and from Mitchell.
There was outgoing at 10:10 to Mitchell, incoming at 12:58, and outgoing at 4:12.
Yes.
And then there were two other outgoing calls that day?
Yes.
Okay. And if the jury's heard evidence in this case that two calls were placed to law enforcement officers that day, would that account for two possible calls that were outgoing that day?
It's possible.
Okay. I asked you to map Mitchell Halderson that day,
Yes.
and he did some stuff that day.
Yes.
Where does he appear to go?
He went north, likely up to the area of the cabin that Krista and Bart had. He left his general residence area shortly after 1 p.m., stopped near Bart and Krista's residence about 1:45 to 2:06 p.m., and then traveled up north. You can see the tower that's highlighted there was utilized from 5:17 p.m. until 6:24 p.m. And then the device goes back to Bart and Krista's residence and starts utilizing data session towers down there from 9:52 to 10:50 p.m.
Understood. And if you could you just detail the time that Mr. Mitchell Halderson made calls to either Bart or Krista that day?
Yes. Started at 6:37 a.m., 12:15 p.m., 6:24 p.m.
And to just compare, just to go back, just to confirm, did Chandler Halderson on July 8th make any calls to his parents?
No.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Analyst Ripp, I want to ask a few questions about those maps we just saw. First of all, am I correct in understanding that those maps track a phone, not a person?
Correct.
So when the district attorney asks you a question, like that map shows Mitchell in Verona, really the question is that map shows Mitchell's phone in Verona, correct?
Yes.
And the second thing I wanted to clarify about those maps, at various times during your testimony, you were asked, you don't know who was using the device after 5 p.m., and your answer was no. Do you recall that kind of question?
Yes.
Is it accurate to say you don't know who was using the device before 5 p.m., if that were the question, correct?
Yes.
You don't know who's using these devices
Correct.
at any time?
Correct.
Now, going back in time to your testimony before the maps, I want to clarify the Google Records exhibit. Do you recall that exhibit?
I do.
And so that exhibit would show, for example, a search query such as Wisconsin dismembered body found. Do you recall that?
I do.
Did that exhibit then show if the results of that query were clicked on?
The only thing that would indicate that would be the follow-up article, as in the example of the state versus Capuzza.
So that could have come up as a result for that initial query, correct?
Correct.
That exhibit isn't saying that someone searched state versus Capuzza.
Correct.
And finally, relating to the Google records again, I believe your testimony was that you obtained records from sometime before July 1st through July 8th. Do you recall saying that?
I recall being asked that.
And your answer was yes.
Yes.
How much in advance of July 1st did you get these records?
I believe that there were several search warrants that were done for the various Google accounts. And I do not remember the exact time frame for any one of those in particular.
But for some period before July 1st, you obtained these same types of records for Mr. Chandler Halderson's Google accounts,
Yes.
where someone could have seen what types of things he searched, correct?
Correct.
Same as they did after July 1st, correct?
Correct. To clarify, the report that I had was for that entire duration. So on those days prior to those particular searches, there was no history of what had been searched, other than in YouTube.
One moment. So it's your testimony that all the records you found for Google records before July 1st, the only search terms used were YouTube search terms?
I would have to double check in the original records to look prior to July 1st.
Do you have those records with you?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Any redirect?
Sure. You were specifically asked in this case to produce records and mapping regarding the time period in question. The first, which corresponded to the last time Bart Halderson and Krista Halderson were known to be alive, through the 8th, which is the time of arrest.
That is correct.
And just to clarify, we talked a little bit about there not being records for certain days. We talk about the July 1st, July 2nd, July 3rd, July 4th, July 5th, and July 6th. We talked there's only YouTube records.
Correct.
YouTube, while owned by Google, is a separate location if you want to erase that history.
Correct.
Okay. So one could go into their Google account, erase that history, and that would not erase your YouTube history.
Quite possibly.
Okay. And I think you testified earlier, you're not here to comment on whether those were deleted or whether they just didn't happen on those days.
Correct.
Okay. The time periods and things of that sort that were relevant, those are all information provided to you by the police and people involved in the investigation. That was areas or times that they wanted you to map on these records.
That is correct.
Okay. No further questions?
May this witness be excused and released.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I don't think you have any exhibits there?
No.
All right, thank you for your time. Let me see the attorneys up at the bench, please.